Hey everyone, and welcome back to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into something really fascinating. We are setting the stage for a deep, structured look at the complex, awe-inspiring, and honestly highly contrasting life of the ultimate pop icon, Michael Jackson. We're going to unpack a really interesting discussion from our source material that breaks down the upcoming Michael Jackson biopic, the literally unimaginable heights of his global fame, the dark family dynamics that kind of fueled everything, and the heavy paranoia that clouded his final days. We've distilled all of this down so we can take this journey together. Let's just jump right in. I fear for my life. They are trying to eliminate me because I've said too much. Now, that is a chilling alleged quote, right? It immediately flips the script on what we normally think of when we picture the king of pop. Highlighted right in our source material, it establishes this intense psychological weight that we're going to be unpacking today. But, before we explore the darkest corners of his later years, we actually need to step back a bit and look at how his legacy is currently being immortalized on the big screen. Part 1. The billion-dollar biopic. Recreating the king of pop. Okay, so to pull off a projected billion-dollar film, producer Graham King, who you might know as the visionary behind Bohemian Rhapsody, well, he knew he needed a totally unique star. So he actually approached Michael's nephew, Jaafar Jackson. And surprisingly, Jaafar initially said no. He basically told him he was just a golfer who happened to know his uncle's dance moves. But King, he saw the vision. Instead of just moving on to the next Hollywood actor, he brought in an acting coach and spent 2 solid years training Jaafar. 2 years. And after that intense acting boot camp, early viewers are saying Jaafar absolutely crushes the role, bringing this eerie, almost unbelievable authenticity to the screen. Which brings us to part 2, a tangled family tree, the Jackson dynamics. So while some relatives, like Janet Jackson, for instance, definitively refuse to participate or even be portrayed in this film, Jaafar's casting highlights a family dynamic that is, well, it's incredibly complex. Listen to this. Alejandra Aziaza was with Randy Jackson for 8 years, and they had 2 children together. Then, following their breakup, she formed a relationship with his brother, Jermaine Jackson, also for 8 years, having 2 more kids, and one of those kids is Jaafar. So the actor playing Michael Jackson is actually the product of this deeply intertwined, almost soap opera-level family history. It's wild. Part 3. The price of greatness. The father figure. You really cannot explain the Michael Jackson phenomenon without talking about his father, Joe. Our source highlights this incredibly jarring contrast between the two of them. On one hand, you have Joe, who unapologetically defended his harsh physical discipline. His stance was basically, look, I worked 2 jobs to keep my 9 kids fed, and I pushed them relentlessly to succeed. But then you have Michael, who endured immense trauma. He famously stated his childhood was completely stolen. No birthdays, no Christmases. Just endless practice and the constant looming threat of a belt. And it poses this really tough question that the source discusses. Without that extreme, painful discipline, would the world have ever even gotten the genius of Michael Jackson? And just to put the sheer scale of what that discipline produced into perspective, 100 million. According to the source, Michael claimed he was performing for that many people globally by the time he was just 5 years old. Think about that for a second. He was literally thrust into a massive global spotlight before he even had a chance to form a normal human identity. Let's look at what that lifelong pressure cooker created at his absolute peak. Our source material features this crazy anecdote from someone who worked as an usher during Michael's victory tour, which had 7 consecutive sold-out nights at Dodger Stadium. The level of fame was described as a true phenomenon, like the last of its kind. The source describes this concert footage where Michael would shoot up through the stage and then just stand there, completely frozen, for 2.5 minutes wearing a gold G-string over his pants. And before the music even started, fans in the crowd would literally begin weeping and passing out just from looking at him. Total pandemonium. Part 4. Fear, Conspiracies, and Death. The final act. But as we know, unparalleled fame brought unparalleled fear. In his later years, which were highly paranoid, our source notes several unverified claims Michael allegedly believed. Things like shadowy elites running the world, history books being entirely fake, and mind control music frequencies. But most chillingly, the source discusses his alleged fear of a plot to kill him for his immensely valuable music catalog, and that these powerful people would eventually frame his death as an overdose. Now, we're presenting these claims neutrally, exactly as the source discussed them, just to show you the profound, heavy state of fear he was living in towards the end. And adding to this whole eerie atmosphere is this quote from his father, Joe. Despite their completely estranged and painful relationship, Joe claimed he actually foresaw the tragedy. He stated that because he was kept out of Michael's inner circle, he couldn't protect him from the people surrounding him, eerily claiming he predicted his son's death to the T. Joe even refused to see Michael in his casket. He said he preferred to only remember him alive and dancing. Which leaves us with this massive, unresolved question that gets debated heavily in our source material. Did the ultimate crushing pressure of unparalleled global fame, combined with a stolen childhood, simply break him down physically and mentally? Or, as speculated based on Michael's own paranoid warnings, was there something a bit more sinister at play regarding his highly valuable estate? It's a debate that absolutely continues to surround his legacy today. But, right before we conclude, the source material takes this very sudden, real-world pivot that we just have to talk about. Part 5, the World Cup Pivot. Podcast monetization in action. In what is honestly a brilliant illustration of modern media, our source abruptly shifts gears. They go straight from discussing Michael's tragic death right into monetizing their audience for the World Cup. It's this fascinating, almost whiplash-inducing look at the mechanics of content creation and commerce. They launched this Future Looks Bright merch drop, creating limited edition gear specifically targeted at the countries where their viewership is the highest, places like Argentina, Colombia, the US, and Mexico. But the smartest business tactic here? Extreme scarcity. They manufactured exactly 50 Iran hats featuring an older historical flag. They created this massive urgency right on the heels of a deeply emotional segment. And I think that brings us to our final thought for today. We've journeyed through the creation of a billion-dollar biopic, a childhood literally traded for greatness, unimaginable global influence, deep-seated paranoia, and finally, a sudden pivot to selling limited edition soccer merch. It really makes you step back and look at the whole picture, doesn't it? What does this source material say about how we, as a society, consume media? How do we process the very real human tragedy behind our greatest icons when it sits right alongside everyday commerce and merch drops? It's a fascinating look at the price of genius and the relentless machinery of modern entertainment. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and remember to keep questioning the information around you. See you next time.